Hello everyone, it's Fred again from Notes of a Nomad, video number 192. Today I want to talk about traveling across Canada. It's been my experience, many of the people living in Canada have only seen a small percentage of the country. A lot of them have never seen, if they live on the West Coast, never seen the East Coast. And also up north, never visited up north. And there's so much that Canada has to offer. And yet they travel around the world. They've traveled extensively in the United States, maybe Mexico, Caribbean, Cuba, but they haven't been to Canada. This past weekend, we had a dinner of friends. There were 6 of us, and all of us have traveled quite extensively. So we often ask, hey, what trip have you been on recently? Where have you been? Have you been anywhere? And the one fellow, Steve, said, yeah, I traveled on train across Canada. I said, wow, I didn't know there was trains crossing Canada. Well, apparently there are. There is a trip that he took, a tour guide tour for 18 nights. And they spent some days in hotels, others on the trains. And I'll share the screen and say what he experienced. Share screen. There we are. And this was the tour that he took, starting in Vancouver and going across by train to Winnipeg and then to Toronto. Then they took another train. That was the first train from Toronto to Montreal. That was on business class. And then they took another train with sleeping cars like the first train from Montreal to Halifax. The numbers here, for example, like it says Halifax 3, that's the number of nights they spent in a hotel. Like, for example, they went to Peggy's Cove and Lunenburg, and they spent 3 nights in Toronto and took a side trip, spent, I think, a night in a hotel in Niagara Falls as well. So they spent time in hotels and visited the surrounding and had lots of tours. That was part of the trip. For example, I think in Winnipeg, they went to see the Canadian Mint, where they make all the coins and etc., print our money. So that's interesting. So there was lots of additional, not just being on the train all the time. And the interesting thing was Steve said he had never been further than the prairies, which was this part of Canada. This is the first time he's ever been to Winnipeg and Toronto. And they also, after they stopped at Halifax, before they flew back, they went to the other province, which is Newfoundland, and the smallest province, which is Prince Edward Island, which is the island there, which is smaller than the island I live on here on Vancouver Island. And that is a province of the country. So it was fascinating to listen to him. I'll show you a couple. I went on the brochure of the organization and got some of the pictures that they have on there. This is the train going through the Rockies. It's obviously very beautiful. And there's an example of the train. You can see the dome cars where you can sit in the car and you can have a look. I'll show you a picture of what it looks like on the dome. This is just a car, a lounge car, and I believe there was games you could play. If, for example, if you're going across the prairies, it's just flat. Once you've seen the first province, the other provinces look the same, with full of wheat fields, etc. But you can spend a lot of time in the dome car and watch it. And there's the dome car, and there's a view from inside the dome car. They spent time in Niagara Falls, and also there was good accommodation, lovely meals, and it was a great way to see Canada. So there was an example of what was included on the tour, 29 meals, and there's the price in Canadian dollars. Not inexpensive, but I'm sure well worth it because, as Steve said, they had a wonderful time and saw so much of Canada that much of it he had never seen. I don't know about his 3 lady friends, but they had seen. A lot of elderly people. And he said, in fact, there was many elderly women, many and few elderly men. I guess that's got something to do with the demographics. So that is such an interesting, I didn't realize it. I was living through him the trip that I took in 1985 when I returned from South Africa after living there for 22 years, bought a little motorhome in the West Coast on Vancouver, started in Victoria and went right across Canada. In fact, went up north to the Yukon, even up to the Arctic on the Dempster Highway, which is quite an experience as well. Popped into Alaska for a few days and then came back and went across Canada, went to all of those provinces. In fact, this hat has a lot of the badges, including Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland and Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And if you're curious about the badge, let me get this. Shunya School, that was the elementary school I went to where I was born in Thunder Bay. So I just have badges on this hat, but a lot of them are from the trip when I went across Canada and saw many of the sites. It's a wonderful country, and many people living in Canada haven't even seen much of it, even though they may be travelers. So I would highly recommend it, and just live through Steve, listening to his stories of what they did in Newfoundland, because the people there speak with a Newfie accent, but wonderful people, and you meet many, many wonderful people across Canada, and it's an amazing place to travel to. So I just thought I'd say, hey, travel across Canada. You don't even have to go travel around the world. There's so much to see here. Not that you shouldn't travel around the world, as I will be later on this year, going back to Australia, etc. So just wanted to mention, in the background, you probably recognize if you've seen the video, this is Salt Spring Island, where my friend Ken and I spent a few days. It's another gorgeous part of Canada as well. So with that, I'll say adios, au revoir, wishing you, your family and friends, lots of love and laughter. And hopefully, if you have the opportunity to visit lots of the beautiful places in Canada, please do so. Bye for now. Till next time, from Fred and Notes of a Nomad.